Ketawa. please be upstanding for His Honourable the Mayor and Deputy Mayor.
Please take a seat. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Council. My name is Councillor Adrian Mather and I'm the Mayor of Wokingham and I will chair this meeting. Before we start, I would like to go through a few preliminaries. Please note that this meeting is being webcast live. Also, a reminder to the members of the need to stand when speaking in the chamber. Also, can members please ensure your nameplate is clearly displayed in front of you? And may I remind everyone that I intend to adhere strictly to the timings set out in the Constitution. I would like to remind members to be mindful to speak directly into the microphones when speaking. If members turn away from the microphone, the sound will not be picked up for online attendees. Are there any apologies?
There are. We have apologies for Councillor Smith, Caroline, Councillor Margetts, Rebecca, Councillor Margetts, Charles, Councillor Nagra, Councillor Alvey, Councillor Gilder, and Councillor Eunice. And attending online, we have Councillor Bell.
Thank you. Minutes of the previous meeting. May I sign the minutes of the annual council meeting held on the 23rd of May 2024 as a correct record? May I show of hands those for? Thank you. Those against? Abstentions? As there is a majority, the minutes are agreed. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Does anyone have a declaration of interest? So that's Stephen and Prue and David. Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to declare an interest in relation to item 26 on the agenda, and it's because I'm the chair and a non-executive director of WBC Holdings.
Thank you. Prue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also have to declare an interest in item 26 as I am a non-executive director of WBC Holdings.
Thank you. David?
And I also have to declare an interest in item 26, Mr. Mayor, as I am a non-executive director of Optalis.
Thank you, David. The next section is Mayor's announcements. I must say that I had a wonderful time at the two D-Day celebrations that I went to, one in Woodley and one here in Wokingham. And it was amazing to see so many people celebrating the 80th year of D-Day. Not only the sacrifice of all the combatants, but also the sacrifices of all the families whose loved ones went away to fight for our democracy. And I thought it was wonderful. I have no further announcements, so we will move on to public question time. Can I remind everyone that supplementary questions must relate either to the original question or the response that is given to the question and must be no longer than 1 minute. I would like to remind exec members that the responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes and these will be timed. We have 4 public questions. Martin Jones to ask, is Martin here? Martin not here. I understand that Mr. Jones is unable to attend this evening. Therefore, we will provide a written response to Mr. Jones after the meeting. The next item is Gary Cowan. Is Gary here or online? Again, I understand that Gary, sorry,
Mr. Mayor, I wonder whether, although Gary isn't here, I may read out his question, read out the response.
of
Because
course,
it's
please
a
go ahead.
question that
Stephen.
I think that we'll have a lot of other people interested in the response. Gary's question, which you can see in your agenda, but for the sake of those people who are watching online, his question is, has the risks of flood inundation from the Bearwood Lakes Dam been taken into consideration in the planning for the local plan update for the Loddon Garden Village? And the answer to that is quite simply yes.
Thank you, Stephen. The next question is from Peter Humphreys. Are you there?
I am here. I recently received a huge council wheelie bin and inquired whether it would be possible to have a smaller one. After some confusion when I contacted Environment Services, I was initially told the bins only come in one size. Then another officer conceded there were in fact two sizes, large and extra large. You'll be familiar with the quotes, build it and they will come, in the Hollywood movie Field of Dreams. It would seem Council Environment Services have amended this to the mantra, supply it and they will fill it, by providing enormous bins and challenging residents to fill them to the brim. This is totally contrary to the government's aim of reducing waste by encouraging recycling. Not everyone has a large driveway leading to the back of their house where these ugly bins can be stored. We're all aware of how the street scene in neighbouring towns like Reading has been detrimentally affected by row upon row of ugly bins. As can be seen in the attached pics, which I hope you've been provided with, the bin totally blocks my side alley and has to be lifted over a concrete step. Difficult when empty, but near impossible for a pensioner when full. Surely it would be possible for the council to supply a smaller, more practical bin to encourage recycling and maintain the pleasant aesthetic of our borough.
Thank you very much for your question, Peter. The provision of 180 litre bins is the standard size container for the majority of households in the borough. For larger families or those households with incontinence waste, a larger 240 litre bin can be provided following an assessment, and this dual approach has been in place since the launch of the project. For reference, the 240 litre bin is the same size as the current garden waste bins. The council's intent is to minimise waste, and the drive is not to fill the bin, as almost 70% of the contents of blue bags under the current system can be recycled. So there should be very little in the wheeled bin, which will support the council financially and also support environmental strategies at the local and national level. A great deal of effort in communications via the media, on the council's website, council tax bills and calendars posted to residents are supporting the initiative, and we also have engagement officers supporting residents and communities across the borough to support this initiative. The smaller 140 litre bins are not visibly very different when compared to the supplied 180 litre bins, as they are both the same height but have a smaller base, which is more likely to topple when moving. And due to the smaller base of the bin, bagged waste can get stuck at the bottom when emptying the bins. We recommend that residents place the black bin in their back gardens if it is accessible, but if this is not possible, the bins should be placed in the front gardens and can be decorated to make them more aesthetically pleasing. Residents that are unable to present their bins for collection due to mobility issues and have no other person in the household able to help can request an assisted collection, where the crew will collect and return the bins from an agreed location at the front of the property, which currently takes place. The waste team is available to discuss any issues residents have with storage or presentation of the new bins at the waste.services@wokingham.gov.uk.
Peter, do you have a supplementary?
I do. According to the latest government census of 2021, 42% of residents in the borough live either in a one or two person households and thus would benefit from a smaller bin. You've clearly stated these are available, and smaller wheelbase would probably make it fittable in my little alley and several other places as well. So my question is again, why can't we do that? And again, smaller bins would obviously be cheaper, and so it would save the council money. And as I say, you've said that the blue bags have a lot of stuff that's not recyclable. So surely you'd want to give smaller bins to stop people putting all this stuff in there in the first place and encourage more recycling. And you said that officers are willing to talk. So could you put one of those officers in contact with me? I'd like to talk to them, please.
Peter, I'm more than happy to get an officer to get in contact with yourself. As previously stated, it was part of the risk assessment as to why the 140 litre bins weren't selected. Again, the smaller wheelbase is more prone to toppling, and we have to take into account the general average ability of residents, some of which may have mobility issues, as we've discussed, and barring them not having an accessible bin collection service, we wouldn't want to put them under, sorry, double checking it was on, unnecessary risk of a bin toppling. And also, again, as I reiterate before, the issue with bin bags being stuck at the bottom of the bin, as discussed with our contractor, we wished for the process to be as smooth as possible with the new wheelie bins, and to avoid frequent issues of the bins being stuck, which have been reported by other authorities. We've decided to go down the 180 litre route and the 240 for those with additional qualifying needs.
The next question is from Andrew Mickleborough.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Children's Services, Prue Bray. On the 12th of July, a widely cited report was published on the Ofsted school inspection system. The Alternative Big Listen, ABL, was compiled by two senior former Ofsted inspectors and reported the views of 1,368 respondents. Page 3 of the main report states, quote, "The findings from the ABL reveal Ofsted has lost very significant levels of trust and confidence from the school sector, and strongly suggest that fundamental, not piecemeal, change is required to craft an inspection system fit for purpose in the second quarter of the 21st century." End of quote. The report identifies many specific areas that the respondents feel must be urgently addressed. My own view, however, is that the many roles and responsibilities of local authorities in the education system have been largely ignored in this ABL report. Local authorities will not only be affected by changes to the school inspection system likely to be introduced by the new government, they also have enormous amounts of knowledge and experience that could and should be fed into these reforms. Local authorities will also play key roles in the successful implementation of the reforms, but will themselves need appropriate support to help achieve this. Are you willing to engage with our borough's members of parliament to discuss with them the findings and recommendations of the Alternative Big Listen, and to ask them to lobby the government with specific proposals for changes that could enable our council to better help to contribute to a reformed, fit-for-purpose schools inspection system?
Thank you for your question, Andrew. So the Ofsted Big Listen was launched during spring 2024 and encouraged all stakeholders in the education system, from parents to school staff, school leaders and local authorities, to respond. The Alternative Big Listen was launched at a similar time with a different set of questions and was run independently of Ofsted. Due to PERDA, the Ofsted official response to the official Big Listen has not yet been made available, nor its outcomes. The Alternative Big Listen was able to produce their results as they are not subject to PERDA. Subsequently, the elections on the 4th of July returned a new government, and we await information on both strategic direction for education and any proposed changes to Ofsted, and further information is anticipated during the autumn of 2024. The Secretary of State met with all stakeholders in the education system on the 17th of July and indicated, whilst a policy direction move is planned away from single word judgments to a scorecard approach, that this will take time and consultation with stakeholders to develop. This does indeed give an opportunity to make representations where appropriate at such time as engagement is sought. So the answer is yes.
Andrew, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. And firstly, thank you very much, Prue, for that very helpful answer, including an explanation of the relationship between the Big Listen and the Alternative Big listen. That was very helpful indeed. And thank you also, for agreeing to meet with our members of Parliament on this really important matter. I do believe that inevitably, this meeting will provide a wonderful opportunity to engage with Clive Jones and Yuan Yuang on additional important matters regarding education, besides the Ofsted inspections. There is a very high level of stakeholder interest, of course, in all such matters. Could I respectfully request that you, as executive member, work closely with the communications team and with Clive and Yuan to feed back a summary of the key issues and any commitments discussed during these meetings?
Thank you for that supplementary, Andrew. You're pleased to know we've already had one formal meeting with Yuan Young, and obviously we've met Clive before. And we've already discussed SEND in particular, which is special educational needs, which is a crucial issue for the borough. I'm sure we can arrange to do some communication on that.
Thank you. That concludes the public questions. Peter and Andrew, you are very welcome to stay for the remainder of the meeting, but can I ask you view the meeting from the public gallery, please? Next item is petitions. Does anybody wish to submit a petition? Okay, I can't see any hands. The next item is the 2026 waste collection and street cleansing procurement. I would like to draw to members' attention that there are some exempt pink papers associated with this item. If members wish to discuss any element of these exempt papers, we must move into a closed session and pass a resolution in those terms. I understand that Councillor Jordan Montgomery is proposing this report. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Mayor.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Beth. Jordan, would you like to speak to the report?
Yes, I would. Am I okay to proceed?
Yeah.
Oh, grand. This report details the approach to markets and seeks approval to issue to the market a contract for waste, recycling collection and street scene activities, including street cleaning, litter bin emptying, and many more. It follows a preparation period of developing an internal project team from the council, ensuring governance structures and processes are in place, i.e. the procurement board, setting up internal project managers, monthly updates to senior leaders, appointment of specialist waste consultants for external advice, and clear market engagement with national and regional providers of services to ensure that a combination, packaging and presentation to the market is as effective as possible. The report seeks to approval to proceed, and its recommendations are clear. In particular, that a formal decision to appoint following rigorous process and due diligence will be taken by this council at a future date, early spring, summer 2025. I'm acutely aware that every household will utilise this service. Residents will quickly form a view on the new service, and the performance of the contractor will represent, in part, the entire council. It will be one of our largest value and highly visual contracts. Hence, we are working thoroughly, ensuring there is sufficient procurement resources and support. As part of a wider preparation, the delivery of the waste strategy that begins in August will support and shape the new procurement process. This will give us an insight to see where we are experiencing difficulties in terms of delivery at the earliest stage, and to provide an indication of what further support will be needed from a future contractor. Our focus is to ensure recycling will increase, supporting our CAP target of reaching 70% waste recycled by 2030, whilst refuse and carbon will decrease. These of us here who are returned to the council will recall that briefings and updates to all members have previously occurred, and this process will continue with further briefings on project process to inform members. However, we should appreciate there are some particular requirements and restrictions to what I'm able to share publicly during the procurement process. In late 2023, we engaged the waste collection and street cleansing team, and we spoke and listened to key potential providers, national bodies such as ADEPT and DEFRA, and adjusted our approach to ensure the most effective and efficient contracts can be provided, and officers will negotiate a proposed position to ensure the best value for this contract. This contract will be different. The industry and the world has moved forward. We will have the climate declaration, carbon reduction targets, increased cost of fuel, the living wage crisis, technological changes, and integrating 2 different contracts as outlined in the report. There is also the possible use of different vehicles and fuel types, as well as possible changes in national legislation. The use of competitive dialogue is also different to ensure the most efficient and cost-effective contracts possible, and this process is outlined in the appendices provided to members.
Can you wrap up, please, Jordan?
Quickly skip to my final point there. Members today are being asked to approve the recommendations outlined in the agenda so that this particular procurement process can be taken forward. This is not a report on the waste collection strategy, which has previously been presented and approved by this council, nor is it in any way a request for this council to approve a specific contract. We are here today to provide the process and provisions by which we will seek a future contractor to provide services that will enable waste collection and street cleaning policies to be carried forward from 2026 onwards. I strongly encourage all members who wish to speak on this matter to keep their questions relevant to the agenda item.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak against the report whilst we're in public session? Anne-Marie?
Marie-Louise, yes, I do.
Sorry.
I have a motion, an amendment to the recommendations that I would like to put forward. But before
distribute that amendment,
it has been distributed, I should say that thanks
have we all got it? Has everybody got the amendment?
Yes. Wait for pink papers. I should say that thanks to the joys of conversion from PDF to Word and back again. Oh. Yep.
Before you speak, Marie-Louise, does the seconder of the original motion, Beth, wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder for the amendment, please? Thank you, Rachel. So, members, you should have the amendment before you on your table.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
We can have a short adjournment for members to read the amendment if members feel this is necessary.
Yep. We also have an amendment. I don't know whether we bring it now or whether we wait until this one's been debated.
So the process, I understand, Pauline, is that we process the first amendment first and then your amendment second. Is that okay? So I need to read out the amendment. Sorry, is that correct?
Mr. Mayor, I think Marie-Louise may have been about to tell you that there is a typing error in the amendment which needs to be corrected, I think, before we move to consider it. Am I correct?
Yes, indeed. I apologise. Thanks to the conversion problems. If in the first paragraph, A, to delegate authority to the Director of Place and Growth to deliver best value, including taking account of the requirement to ensure the most effective and efficient social value return to the, and then please strike out council's possible return to the council and. So the sentence should read efficient social return to the wider community in terms of social value. And I apologise to council for this mistake.
So in terms of process, Priya, can we accept that change to the change? Yeah, that's fine, apparently. So I think there's just a deletion of.
Okay, yes. So if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, on the 5th line should read efficient social value return to the wider community in terms of social value. So strike out the words council's possible return to the council and.
Okay. Marie-Louise, you have 3 minutes to speak to your amendment. Do you wish to speak now, or?
I would, please. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
That's lovely. Thank you very much indeed. We've been talking about bins for a long time. As we also heard before, and during the elections and petitions and so on, the focus has, we've learned how important bins are and the collection strategy is to the way that people view the council and view the services that it provides. I should say that now it's kind of sorted. As far as my mum's put the label on the bin and she's put the timetable on the fridge. So as far as she's concerned, it's done. But we've had a lot of debate about what the strategy should be, but less debate to the point of it being crowded out of how we should deliver this strategy. And particularly, I want to talk to, and this amendment speaks to, the importance of promoting social value within the procurement process and then later during the unfolding of the strategy and the actual contract that we make. The election that just passed was in part a call for greater trust in public services. We know that this is important to everybody, and we know that of all the services that the council provides, bins are the ones that are closest to people's, if not their hearts, and certainly their front door, or the nearest available public access. It matters to people, and so therefore we want in this amendment to underline our commitment as a council to using this contract negotiation to share wealth and opportunity locally. And to do this, we want to demonstrate to people that we're using their money in a way that enhances and supports the common good. And we believe that there is a legal basis for this in the 2012 Public Services Act. And this motion shows how this legislation can mobilise procurement that is both transparent and builds local capacity and offers real tangible benefits, visible tangible benefits for the people who live and work in our community. So what we've included in the motion are some examples of what we believe to be a good and effective social value, which we would like the council to consider, with the executive to consider in their negotiations. And I want to stress that these are not sort of nice to have things. Quite often social value is seen as this kind of, if you can do it at a good price, then it's a nice extra. We would like it to be considered as, as central to the process of procurement, because it's the way in which we can use the money that people have paid for these services in a way that promotes the well-being of the whole community. So this is a need to have, not a nice to have. And I would very much hope that the council would support us in this. Thank you.
Thank you, Marie-Louise. Jordan, do you accept the amendment?
Yes, I do.
Thank you, Jordan. The amendment is then incorporated into the substantive motion. The next point here is for Pauline. Do you have a seconder for your amendment, Pauline? Thank you, George Evans. Yes, we're coming to that. Can we have an adjournment so we can distribute the change?
It's so obvious that I wouldn't. You don't need to write it.
If we don't need an adjournment, we won't have an adjournment. Sorry. What is your proposed change, Pauline?
Okay, my proposed change is that we refer this to scrutiny before we take it any further, because it was meant to go to scrutiny and didn't. I've got more to say, but that's the proposal.
Mr. Mayor, I believe this is one of those decisions on which council itself is sovereign, so it's completely inappropriate to send it. to
Sorry,
review and
I've
scrutiny.
got a right to make an amendment. I'm proposing an amendment. It's not your say as to whether I propose an amendment or not.
I do think
Stephen.
your amendment has to be constitutional.
My proposal is that we refer it to scrutiny without further discussion.
Okay, we will have an adjournment with this amendment from Pauline and seconded by George. So we'll have an adjournment for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, just to clarify, I will be able to speak on the amendment when we get back?
Yep.
Thank you.
You have 3 minutes to speak to your amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Given our experience to date with issues of unemptied litter bins, weed-infested roads throughout the borough, not to mention last year's litter bin debacle, where bins were slated for removal with no consultation and subsequently left unemptied as the process descended into chaos, we can't support this proposal. The project has not been to scrutiny as was originally proposed because of the general election, and I feel it's premature to delegate authority to the exec member and officers and sally forth without such a review. The council has previously admitted that the list of litter bins and streets they have is not complete and had promised to do a survey and ensure that they were accurate before the tender progressed. This seems not to have happened. We were sent lists yesterday of known bins and streets to verify by the end of August. It is incredible that the council do not yet know where their litter bins are and that they do not seem to have a full list of streets despite being responsible for their maintenance. Because of these omissions, I believe it's very risky to charge off down the procurement path without having a complete view of the scope and the service being tendered. I would request that a tender is delayed long enough to be reviewed at scrutiny and for a proper audit of bins and streets to be completed as promised. I would like to propose that this item is referred to scrutiny before any further tender progresses.
Thank you, Pauline. Jordan, do you wish to accept the amendment?
No.
Thank you, Jordan. Now we have to move to another section. Excuse me. Does any, we're now going to debate. Does any member wish to speak to the amendment? Yeah, the seconder can speak.
Mr. Mayor, I'll reserve my right until anyone else wants to speak.
That's fine. Thank you, George. So any members wishing to speak to the amendment? So that's Peter Harper. Anybody else? Prue Bray? The amendment being that this be sent to scrutiny first. That's what we're talking about. So we start with Peter Harper then.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I'm speaking for this amendment is I find it extraordinary that we have an amendment here which is specifying a particular procurement process for a single contract. We have in the Constitution, Chapter 13, which covers the entire procurement process for this council, which has been debated as part of our audit and risk management. It's been accepted as a process which does mention social value. There's clauses within the Chapter 13 for social value, which should be followed. But here we have an amendment which completely changes the procurement process just for the waste contract, which surely, I'm surprised that the finance and the procurement team haven't thrown this out, because surely that should not be constitutionally correct, that you can change the procurement process for an individual contract. That's why I'm supporting this amendment. It should go back to scrutiny. Scrutiny should remove this, because they should be comparing it to the Chapter 13 procurement process, which covers this already.
Prue?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have to say, I don't want to be rude, but I'm completely at a loss as to either the Conservatives group's position on this or their understanding of it. The council has a waste collection contract. We have to have a new contract ready to start when the current one ends in 2026. So I presume people understand that procuring such a contract takes time, that the contractor needs to be appointed well before the date on which they take over, so they have time to mobilise. So we need to make a decision tonight on the procurement route for that contract. And this has been discussed previously at overview and scrutiny last November, I believe. This item simply describes the process for procuring the contract. It is nothing whatsoever to do with anything to do with waste collection changes or whatever. And whether the list of bins is correct tonight or not is really irrelevant, because you've got months of negotiation in which that can be made sure it is correct. The recommendation is that we go to the open market to spread the net as wide as possible. We are recommended to use competitive dialogue to permit the negotiation between the council and bidders, and we are recommended to put the waste collection and the various street cleansing contracts together to get some economies. All of those things are aimed at getting best value for the council, and it's a decision of full council. I just can't understand what they're going on. Anyway, doing it any other way would result in a restricted pool of potential bidders, higher costs, and a less good fit with what the council wants. Why would anyone object to the procurement route that is proposed? And it is entirely legitimate to add the social value amendment to this motion because it's about the way the contract will be procured. And that's an entirely legitimate process and doesn't require to go anywhere else than this council. There are a number of different options that will be considered for inclusion in the final contract. There are going to be significant changes in the next 2 years to what the government requires local authorities to do about waste collection and on recycling in particular. It will be stupidity itself to impose restrictions on options now when we don't know what will be allowed in the future. In addition, leaving some options open will permit some trade-offs where cost and desirability need to be weighed against each other in order to emerge with a workable contract within the financial envelope available. It would make no sense at all to insist on every single detail being nailed down now. And at the end of the process, the whole council will get a vote on actually awarding the contract. A lot of this has been explained at overview and scrutiny. I'm sorry Pauline doesn't remember. And it's been done in briefings to members of the political groups.
Order, Mr. Mayor.
Pauline?
That's a personal accusation. We have not discussed the cleaning of roads or the emptying of litter bins at scrutiny, apart from when we called in the nonsense, which happened last year. I certainly do understand exactly what's going on. I've tendered many contracts myself, and 101 procurement is you don't tender something if you don't know what it is.
Well, perhaps unlike you, Pauline, we have read the papers and we do know what it is we're tendering. We need
You've seen the list of litter bins.
Please, everybody, calm down just a minute.
We are
Can you finish your statement, Prue?
I've got about 2 lines to go, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. We do not need a list of litter bins in order to know that we need a competitive dialogue process, which will come back to council in next spring. I am at a loss to understand why, on the evening on which we're debating this, without any warning to anybody, the Conservatives come up with this proposal on the most major contract that we have in the council. That doesn't suggest to me any sort of understanding of what the processes are. I think we should just reject this amendment.
Stephen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think most of Peter's comments seem to be relating to the amendment proposed by the Labour group, which has now become part of substantive, rather than actually speaking to his own group's amendment. But can I just remind all colleagues that this item is simply seeking council's approval of a procurement process, not a decision on the contents of a new contract. Council officers have been working on this for a very long time and with great thoroughness and care. And as part of the preparations for this evening, they offered a briefing to all the political groups, and they've attempted to answer all of the questions that those groups have raised. And I'm confident that they've considered all the matters raised in this evening's discussion. Can I just also say that one thing that Peter did say at the close of his speech was that this should go to overview and scrutiny so they could strike out this amendment. I think that was your words, wasn't it, Peter? Well, overview and scrutiny don't have the power to do that. This is a decision made by the full council. Overview and scrutiny cannot strike out something that the full council has decided. That is not how the Constitution works. And I think there is a bit of constitutional confusion here. And I think we, as the full council, are the deciding body on this matter. And this is before us to decide upon. And that's what we should do, decide upon it now.
Peter, have you got a point of order?
Point of personal explanation.
Okay.
Should be mentioned. Of course, if it doesn't get voted on in this council meeting, it can go to overview and scrutiny, who can make a recommendation that it reverts back to the original motion. So we wouldn't vote for it now and then go back to overview and scrutiny committee. That's not what I'm recommending. And that's what that's what you're implying that I was recommending, so not.
Well, if I implied that, I was not intending to do so. But clearly we have an ability to make a decision now, and I'm suggesting we do.
George, as a seconder, it's now your turn to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to remind everyone that this is a really hot topic, and we may all remember the decision over litter bins last year, which obviously was a very hot topic, and we heard on the doorsteps when we were out campaigning earlier this year. The important thing also is that this was previously meant to go to scrutiny, but didn't because of Purdah. And I don't understand why just because Purdah came along, that has to be skipped and go to us here. The proper process should be followed. I also want to labour the point about a proper scope. I don't understand how you can possibly go to a tender without knowing all the information. And we have lots of questions, but not many answers. So I think it's reasonable. I think it's sensible. And with this being such a hot topic and important matter for our residents, it should get the necessary scrutiny and come back here once it's gone through that process.
Thank you, George. Stephen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It seems to me from listening to the discussion that we're conflating two issues here, in that we're talking about a process for procurement, and yet the suggestion coming from the other side there is all about the specification. And we're talking about a contract that isn't going to be starting until 2026. So inevitably, even if we had a specification tonight and we listed out all of the roads, all of the bins, etc., it would change before we sign the contract. So this is going to go through several layers of scrutiny. It will be discussed at committee when we see the outcomes of the procurement process. All we are doing tonight is approving a procurement process that starts this discussion. All of the issues that are being raised will come through at later stages. We don't need to worry about that for now. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Stephen. And to wrap up the debate, the proposer, Jordan, has the right to reply on the amendment.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. We had somebody with a hand up.
Sorry.
Yeah, just one point I wanted to make. It seemed that Councillor Conway's argument was this council is sovereign body and therefore we don't need to worry about going back to the scrutiny committee. If that's the case, why don't we just scrap the scrutiny committees altogether and just take everything to council and get on with it?
Sorry, back to Stephen.
For the simple reason, Dave, that some decisions are sovereign to the council, others are not, and this is one of the ones that is.
All right. This is going to be the end of this debate, please. Jordan has the right to reply on the amendment. Thank you.
In the interest of time, Mr. Mayor, I'm reserving my rights.
Thank you. Now we move on to the vote. All of those for the amendment? All of those against? Abstentions? The amendment fails. Sorry, just bear with me 1 second. Yeah, I think we've done that.
I mean, we go back to the substantive motion. We go back to the amended.
Yes. Okay. So we've accepted the first amendment. We've rejected the second amendment. So now we go back to the substantive motion with the amendment. So now we're going to debate that. Does any member wish to speak against the amended motion? Pauline? Anybody else? Just Pauline. Pauline, would you like to start?
I won't make it painful by repeating my entire speech again. I just wanted to point out that I think that we will live to regret rushing this We've got 2 years in order to get the contract correct. You can shake your head as much as you like. We have seen quite a lot of Liberal mess from rushing things and not doing the work properly. We need to do the work properly and to understand what we're tendering before we tender it.
Stephen.
Okay.
Thank you. I wasn't going to say anything, but that, I'm afraid, deserves a response. And the response very simply is there is going to be ample time to look at the details you're concerned about. As my colleague Stephen Newton said, all we're doing here is approving a procurement process. Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, we are now running out of time. Bear, as the seconder of the original motion, you've got the right to speak now.
I don't have anything to say about it at the moment. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Beth. We now move on to a vote for this item. All those in favour, please. All those against? Abstentions? So the amended motion, the substantive motion, is carried. Thank you. The next item is the Treasury Management 2023-24 outturn. I understand Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay is proposing this report. Is that correct, Imogen? Is there a seconder? Thank you, Stephen. Imogen, would you like to speak to the report?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes. This is the Treasury Management Outturn Report. This report was first presented at last week's executive and is now being recommended to Council as a whole. It is a retrospective view that shows how well the Council has been managing its debt and finances over the last financial year. So it is not a decision-making report, but it's here to let us know what has happened. To go through the handling of the Council's finances in terms of its debts and cash balances for the year 23-24 have met the indicators that were set out in the Treasury Management Strategy. There are some clear differences in the housing revenue account, but this is because of our mid-year agreement to provide funding for the Ukrainian and Afghan settlement scheme. However, the external debt of this council at the end of March is 128 million, which reduces to 103 million when you factor in the net indebtedness. This is an improved situation from the earlier mid-year forecast, which had us at 129 million external borrowing and 110 million net indebtedness. The less we borrow externally, the less we have to pay back in interest payments. So less is more in this case, and this is a far better place to be. There is an improved position for the ratio of financing cost to the net revenue stream, prudential indicator from the mid-year forecast. This means that the overall cost of capital is fully funded from investment incomes and from our commercial regeneration and investor save schemes. There is also a reduction in the capital financing requirement as of the 31st of March 2024. This represents an improved position to 355 million from 398 million, and the 398 million forecast was in the mid-year report. This reduction was achieved through reducing the in-year capital spending and maintaining significant levels of debt repayment. One of the additional things I would like to make clear is on this report is on page 89 to 90, and that is all of our investment loans that have been made over the year were repaid back to us on time, in full, bringing the council a desperately needed income of 3.6 million during this year. In opposition, we always aspired to get council's external borrowing under control as the long-term debt predictions were unsustainably high at the time. I can comfortably say that over the last 2 years, under our Liberal Democrat administration, we have been able to see that this process is beginning to get the council's external borrowing under much better control and is paying off. The benefit to our council taxpayers is ensuring that they are not saddled with paying off huge debts with high interest rates. What borrowing we have been doing has been all about delivering essential services and investor save schemes that save the council money in the long term. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Imogen. Does any member wish to speak against this report? Dave?
I'm not actually speaking against it, and I'm not challenging the accuracy of the report, but there are a few comments I'd like to make. First of all,
you can't. I can't have just general comments, Dave. I'm going to stick to the Constitution. You either speak against the report or you don't.
Okay, I'll speak against them.
Okay.
While I don't challenge the accuracy of the report itself, I do find that the way it's formatted is relatively opaque. And in the absence of an opportunity to speak to officers about the detail behind the numbers, I would struggle to support this bill. One thing I would like to say as a comment and feedback, I know we haven't met yet, is look at the format and the content and how the information is displayed in a bid to make it more transparent for all members moving forwards, so that we can have a better understanding of it throughout the council without having to go into more detail.
Imogen?
Can I just respond to that the report is a format that we had before under the Conservative administration, and it's a standard report?
We now move to a vote on this item unless anybody else wishes to speak. For all those in favour of the recommendations as set out in the report on page 83, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. All those against, please raise your hand. Abstentions, please raise your hand. Thank you. The recommendations are carried. Thank you. We now move to member question time. Please remember that supplementary questions must relate either to the original question or the response that is given to the question and must be no longer than 1 minute. I would like to remind exec members that responses to questions must be no longer than 2 minutes, and these will be timed. I believe we have 5 questions today from members. Councillor Sam Akhtar, can you please put your question?
Thank you, Chair. My question is for the exec member for Environment and Climate. Given the hazards posed by sharp litter fragments to both people and wildlife, can the council implement and ensure a protocol for litter collection prior to grass cutting in public areas? For instance, there have been numerous instances where discarded drink cans have been left in open grass and upon mowing has been shredded into dangerous sharp fragments, posing a significant risk akin to scattered knives. Additionally, this process contributes to the creation of microplastics, which further damage our environment. Implementing this measure would significantly reduce the risk of injury to residents, pets, and local wildlife, and contribute to a cleaner and safer community environment.
Thank you very much for your question, Sam. As part of our contract with the Tivoli Group, prior to grass cutting, litter should be cleared from the area. Where the grass has become long and it is difficult to spot and remove the litter prior to cutting, our contractors are expected to arrange for its removal once cutting is finished. Where an area of litter has been missed, we request our contractors to return to leave the area litter-free. We have contract monitors who raise issues such as this direct with our contractor and encourage residents to report these issues so that we can arrange for our contractor to rectify the matter. We will remind and review with our current contractor, and as part of this process, we've checked our customer service complaints relating to this issue and so far have found 0.
Sam, do you have a supplementary?
Can the council confirm if there are any plans to coordinate with community members or local organisations outside of contractors to conduct maybe litter patrols or clean-up initiatives to ensure the grass is actually clean before mowing?
I'm sure if any group or parish council or any body such as that reaches out to the council, reaches out to myself, we will be very receptive and happy to coordinate with them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Next question is from Councillor Andrew Gray.
Thank you. With the growing population in Shinfield, residents are concerned that public transport connections are not keeping up with growth. Public transport to Woking in particular is infrequent and slow. What is the council doing to improve public transport between Shinfield and Wokingham?
Thank you, Andrew, for your question. Any public transport connections provided need to be financially sustainable. Section 106 funding is currently being used to support services between Reading and Shinfield. To provide a new service to Wokingham is therefore unlikely to be sustainable based on the current demand. Reading buses will enhance the Leopard 3 service to Arborfield from Shinfield and Reading to every 15 minutes in the morning, late afternoon and evening from September 2024. However, during other times when fewer passengers travel, the service will operate every 30 minutes. The Executive has recently approved an updated bus service improvement plan. One of our aspirations is to improve bus services from Shinfield to Wokingham along the Leopard 3 corridor, and officers are looking at the level of Section 106 funding secured to enhance this service. Another aspiration in the BSIP is to create a Shinfield to Winnersh and Wokingham service. However, to date, the Department for Transport has awarded us limited funding to deliver these improvements. If sufficient funding does become available, we will look to make these improvements in partnership with local bus operators. Longer term, should further development come forward in Shinfield, additional enhancements and contributions toward public transport will also be sought.
Andrew, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, please. Thank you. Thank you for those. I think the potential improvements to the Leopard 3 service are quite encouraging, which I did see in the bus service improvement plan. One thing I was going to, there's obviously one part of the growth is to do with an increasing number of secondary school age children going to Wokingham schools from Shinfield. One of the big issues with public transport at the moment is that the Leopard 3 service goes at times which really aren't suitable for getting into Wokingham schools at the right time. Are the timings of the timetable in the morning something that can be looked at and adjusted as part of that improvement?
Thank you, Andrew, for your supplementary question. We're always looking at timetables to try and tweak them wherever possible so they join up with schools and make it much easier. The slight issue we have with the Leopard 3, it's an hourly service running from Arborfield right by Bowhunt School, and that's the one we're trying to enhance. And if we can enhance that with the Section 106 funding and we work out a good business case for it, then hopefully that will assist.
Thank you, Paul. The next question is from Nagin Najella.
Thank you, Chair. My question is regarding new developments in the borough. Many residents have raised with me issues relating to maintenance of their development and the lack of clarity over responsibilities of estate management companies versus responsibilities of the council. Many residents feel as though they are paying twice and yet still do not have the standard of maintenance they would expect on their developments. Where the borough council anticipates adopting new open spaces and highways infrastructure, how does the borough council communicate the areas adopted and any delays in the adoption process to the borough residents?
Thank you for your question, Nagi. Let me begin with a factual description of the current situation and then, if I may, suggest a possible way forward. First, the facts. Developers are not required to pass land or roads over to the council for adoption. And where this does not happen, residents normally pay a maintenance charge to the management company set up by the by the developers to maintain the area. And when purchasing a property, residents should be made aware by their conveyancing solicitors whether they are signing up to a management company and the charges associated with that management company. The council cannot force developers to put a development forward for adoption, as the site is effectively a private site. And as such, the council has no control over maintenance standards in unadopted developments. However, I share your concerns about this unsatisfactory situation. And as this is a problem not confined to Wokingham, I'm happy to write to our two new MPs covering the borough to ask them to raise this matter with ministers.
Nagi, do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. So thank you for your response. Till we have a response back from the MPs and the ministers, is there an alternative solution? One of the examples being where there is overgrown vegetation in the communal areas in these new developments, which needs attention, and estate management companies aren't responding, which is leading to residents being stressed out. So how do we deal with situations like that?
Well, obviously, as I said in my answer to your original question, we cannot force developers to do things, but we obviously do have a role in lobbying, and we can approach developers and management companies that are not performing effectively and try and persuade them to do their duty. I did last municipal year intervene in a case where leaseholders were not getting proper service from a management company. That did elicit a response from the management company and some improvement in the situation. But the ultimate solution to this problem, I think, is a new piece of legislation emanating from Parliament that addresses this problem across the country, not just in the specific scheme that you're referring to, or even not just in Wokingham Borough.
Thank you, Stephen. And the next question is from Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to ask the Leader of the Council to give me an update on when he'll publish the draft local plan.
Thanks for your question, Pauline. I think you're referring to the final version of the local plan that we will bring to the Council for approval. I had hoped that we'd been able to do that at this evening's meeting, but the ambition sadly could not be realised as we've been waiting for final consultee inputs, and the Council's external legal advisors need time to digest the plan as a whole before they can assure us of its soundness. And of course, as you'll be aware, the plan needs to be sound to pass muster at the planning inspector's inquiry. The plan will therefore come to the next scheduled council meeting on the 19th of September, where I hope it will receive unanimous approval. It will, after all, be based on the draft approved by the administration of which you were a part, though with some important improvements in policy terms.
Pauline, do you have a supplementary?
No, I don't. Thank you for the information.
The next question is from Councillor Dave Edmonds.
Thank you. The council has now been led by the Liberal Democrat or a Liberal Democrat-led coalition for over 2 years. In this time, there's been a complete failure to finalise and present a local plan to this council, which has led to numerous inappropriate planning applications. Is this failure a result of lethargy or incompetence?
Thank you for your question, Dave, and welcome to the council. Work on the new local plan began in 2015 when your party, I seem to recall, led the council. 7 years later, in 2022, when your party was replaced, the new administration inherited a draft local plan that had just been out to Regulation 18 public consultation. We have sought to improve on that draft, mainly through detailed work on policies on green spaces, areas of public landscape value, energy efficiency in new homes, and developer contributions for affordable housing. While this important work was underway, and as you can, I'm sure, appreciate, that kind of work does require time. But while this important work was underway, we lobbied the government for a reduction in our overall housing target. The target, of course, imposed by the government. That target, unfortunately, took no account of over-delivery during the current plan period. My predecessor and I wrote to the Secretary of State and his ministers and secured the support of some of our then MPs, especially Theresa May. After many months, our efforts seemed to be making headway. Unfortunately, however, the government, your government, declined at the last minute to allow us to deduct past over-delivery from our new target, thereby forcing nearly 2,000 more homes on the borough than we were required by the government to take by their own calculations. Your comments about lethargy and incompetence are highly insulting, I have to say, to the hardworking and highly professional officers who, under both the previous and the current administrations, have dedicated so much time and effort to bringing our new local plan forward. it would be more appropriate to thank them than to offer such unfair criticism.
Do you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do. In the continuing absence of a published plan, can the leader of the council at least confirm that the large housing development at Hall Farm will not be included in it as publicly promised by his predecessor as leader of the council and the current working MP, the placard wielding Clive Jones? Thank you.
Thank you for your supplementary. Expected you would ask a supplementary, and it was reasonably predictable which route you choose to go down. We will be debating the local plan at the September council meeting, as I said in answer to my Pauline's question earlier, and you will have the chance to see the full details of what's in the plan at that stage. In fact, when the papers are published in advance of the 19th September meeting. But I would remind you, if I may, we inherited a draft local plan with certain commitments in it, and that draft local plan included Hall Farm. It was put in there by your administration, and we have been looking at how we deal with that draft local plan. We've taken legal advice on what we can do, and that legal advice is very clear that we have very limited room for manoeuvre when confronted with a draft local plan that includes major sites in private ownership.
Right, now we move on to the next section, which is minutes of committee meetings and ward matters. Please put your hand up if you wish to speak, and we will take a record. Okay, I think we've got everybody. If we miss somebody, you can give us a quick nudge and we will let you speak, as long as it's within the 20 minutes. Peter, would you like to start, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The grass cutting has only just been started this year in Finchampstead, which, due to the height of the grass, has left rotting grass scattered across pavements and verges. Weeds are growing through pavements and the streets are not being swept regularly, leading to blocked drains. Is this the new normal for the maintenance of public highways, or is the contractor not delivering the service they are paid for?
As was discussed in the previous corporate community and overview scrutiny committee, got that mostly right. We have relayed the issues we've had with grass cutting, in particular relating to the wettest winter and early spring period on record, with the previous record being the year before. We will continue to go through our areas as per the schedule, and I'm happy to provide a written response as to see when your particular areas of Finchampstead are on the list.
Martin Alder, please.
Good evening. My question is to Paul Fishwick, Active Travel. There's been a noticeable increase in the number of long overdue road resurfacing projects either in or around my ward that affects residents. The techniques used have varied and appear to have changed from those that have been used in previous years, particularly for those of a particular age, raising a number of comments about the works from constituents. Could the member explain how the choice of techniques for road surface maintenance is made, what the pros and cons are, both technically and financially, and how these differ, if at all, from seemingly similar techniques used in previous times or before. It would be helpful for residents to better understand the sort of process they should expect when each of the different techniques is chosen for use in a particular location. The understanding of the effects of weather conditions, the times needed to complete the works, and particularly the timescales of returning the roads to a normal condition, particularly with the surface dressing technique, and the use of post resurfacing taking place would be very helpful.
Thank you, Martin, for that very long question. Very detailed as well. I'm not sure I'll get it in 2 minutes, but first of all, I'd like to say about the lack of funding that we receive. It's a huge financial challenge for this authority as well as other authorities across the country to try and keep all of our residents safe and well. We also get less funding per head of population in this unitary authority than any other, and we're about 30 million less than the average. The previous Conservative government also failed to actually provide sufficient funding for local roads, and that was across the country, and they were criticised this week in the National Audit Office for not having a good enough understanding of the local road conditions. The alarm survey, which is done annually, is now showing £16.3 billion worth of backlog of funding, which is up £4 billion in the last 2 years. But what do? Well, we carry out technical surveys, we carry out safety inspections, and we carry out analysis. And from that, we develop our annual programme. And our annual programme, we'd like to do lots of resurfacing, but lots of resurfacing is very, very expensive. And part of the analysis puts roads into a red category, an amber 1, an amber 2, or a green. Now, what we've done is move the dial this year even more than we did last year onto preventative maintenance. And preventative maintenance is surface dressing. And surface dressing stops the formation of defects in the road. It seals it. It's an overlay.
Paul, can you wrap up, please?
It's an overlay, and it is a sixth the cost of resurfacing. So it's considerably lower cost. We're also using asphalt preventative as well. And we have a programme of 82 roads, of which we've completed 80 of them already.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
Councillor Andrew Gray next, please.
Thank you. This question is to Paul again. Sorry. Is there an update on the pathway from Laley Path to Shinfield Infant School and when that will become complete? Residents really need this in place for the beginning of next school year, and it's been a concern for residents in the parish council for a couple of years now.
Thank you, Andrew, for that question. Yes, Laley Path has been on a list, and we have got officers to do some work on it, feasibility work this year. It looked quite simple, first of all. It was widen the existing verge, create a new footway, get the school to dedicate some land, and join it up with the length of footway which runs up to Shinfield Green. However, what we found is a little wall, and the little wall is listed. And that has caused us a major headache. And what we're now trying to do is work with the planners, and what we really need to do to get through some kind of planning application, if it would be approved. If it was not going to be approved, then we have to stop where we currently are. It's a really difficult situation we're currently in. They may come up with, we can relocate that wall, But that's the position we're in at the moment. It's going to be a bit of a long, drawn-out process, I'm afraid.
Councillor Joseph Barley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for the Leader of the Council, Councillor Conway. I'm glad that I'm able to ask this question, as the last time I spoke in this building was at the dismally ran Planning Committee meeting last month, of which the minutes bear relation to my question. Now, to lay out some context, every other speaker that evening was permitted discretion over running slightly over time, but I was refused any whatsoever. As the time allocated to ward members had reached a threshold, the committee's decision to outright deny myself of any discretion meant I was barred from presenting my concise yet critical information to the committee, effectively denying myself and the residents of Barkham and Arborfield a voice. Now, following this, I requested to be put on the record objecting to the committee's decision to deny myself and my residents a voice by refusing to offer me the discretion that other speakers were offered. Now, I was further appalled when I discovered that my objection to their decision and even my attendance was absent from the published minutes, silencing myself and residents once again. Councillor Nyengumwena also noted there was no reference to why he was not...
Can we get to a question, please?
Surely. Present during part of the presentation, and that's why he was denied a vote. Our complaints were made 2 weeks ago, and there were also follow-ups to Councillor Margette's email complaint 6 weeks ago. Yet none of us have received an answer. What's being done to resolve these inaccuracies and complaints? What lessons are being learned from it? And what is the council doing to ensure this never happens again?
Right, so thank you for that. We thought Martin Alder's question was long. Okay, let me start with where you began, Joseph, in which your claim you were denied the chance to speak. As I understand it, and obviously I did attend that meeting, but to speak on another application, and I'd left before you got the chance to speak. But as I understand it, 3 minutes is allowed to local ward councillors, but that's 3 minutes for all local ward councillors. So if I had been accompanied to that meeting by my 2 colleagues, well, one of them actually already is on the committee, so if I'd been accompanied by Martin Alder, we would have had to share that 3 minutes between us. And my understanding is Charles Margette's actually used up the total allocation allowed to you and him, which is why you were unable to get the chance to speak. That's my understanding of the situation. If I'm incorrect, I'll quite happily stand corrected. The other points you raise really relate to your complaint, or the complaint that's been made about that. That is being handled by legal, and you will get a response as soon as they're able to give you one.
Councillor Beth Rowland, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for Jordan and is about black waste bins. Sorry. Huge tranches of my ward were missed for delivery on the first time round a couple of weeks ago, and it seemed to be the houses that didn't face directly onto the main roads. So houses that were in not a cul-de-sac but a pathway. I've reported all of them, as well as some of the individual residents reporting their own. The second attempt at delivery was yesterday, and I watched the lads as they pulled the bins around. Each one took 2 bins. My house is 2, so 2 were delivered. The next it's 2, only 1 was. What houses in this area were missed? Some of the residents are going away on holiday very soon. They are concerned that their bins will be delivered at some stage, hopefully before the end of the month. And they are concerned that they will be taken by other residents who haven't had bins. It's all a bit of a mess, really. Can you assure me that it will be put right and quickly?
Thank you very much for your question, Beth. So we are still on track to deliver what we expect to be the full number of bins by the end of this month. However, as part of the final week, we enter the mopping up process, which is where we are going back and cross-referencing all of the areas where we've previously delivered to see which areas have been missed, reaching out to ward councillors such as yourself, and reaching out to various parish councils as well to see if they've had reports of areas that have been missed on the initial pass-through. Once that mop-up is complete, we will then be issuing out comms, leaflets to residents addressing whether or not they've received their bins. If they haven't, providing the key signposting to waste services to ensure that no one is missed.
Councillor George Evans, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are several planning applications which are pending determination within Barkham and Arbfield. I'm sure there are many more across the borough. I've been receiving emails from residents as to when they may be determined as the planning committee so they can play their part. They're confused as to why the recent planning committee meetings have been cancelled. 2 of the last 3 planning committee meetings haven't happened. Can you please explain why they were cancelled, if August's meeting is due to happen, and what impact this will have to the list of planning applications that will need to go to the planning committee?
I imagine that's being asked of me. Is it, George? Yeah. Just wanted to make sure that I wasn't answering on somebody else's behalf. Well, let me clarify as best I can the situation. As far as I'm aware, there will be an August planning committee. It has an agenda. The agenda of planning committees is rarely fixed in stone before they're published. Things come on. Sometimes they can't be proceeded with because there is still some requirement for a statutory consultee to provide their input. And if that's not ready, then it can't go to committee. My understanding was none of the reports, or it could have been just one, was ready for the July committee. It is important, of course, to remember that we did have that little thing called a general election. That led to the cancellation of all public-facing committees, apart from the planning committee and the licensing committee, which are statutory committees and therefore have to go ahead, come what may. But in this occasion, there weren't any planning applications that could be brought forward for determination by the committee. That's my understanding of the situation. I should say that I am not responsible for the day-to-day workings of the planning committee. I should say that our professional officers have to make a judgment as to when an application is ready to come forward and be determined by that committee, not me. I can't do that. It's not my role, and it would be quite wrong of me to interfere in that kind of way. So this is a process that members are required to, of the committee are required to determine planning applications brought before them, but their readiness to be brought before them is a judgment that is only to be made by officers.
Councillor Katrine Harding, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A question for Councillor Fishwick. Arriva buses are ceasing operation of the 850 bus route between Reading and High Wycombe this Saturday, which is one of the relatively few bus routes connecting Charville, Walgrave and Sonning to Reading, Twyford and Henley and up to High Wycombe. Thankfully, Carousel buses have stepped in to ensure the continued operation of the service. Is there a risk that this service may not continue to run? And what is the council doing to improve the very limited existing bus services which connect Thames Ward and the villages within it to the many facilities we do not have within walking distance? Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine, for your question. Yes, the 850 bus service is ceasing on Saturday, currently run by Arriva. Fortunately, Carousel buses are going to take that over, and they will continue with the same timetable as Arriva originally had. It's a commercial operation, and it's a commercial decision on how they operate that particular service. I'll make further announcement in the executive update shortly in this meeting. What are we doing as well? The 128, 129 service corridor, we've got aspirations to enhance that service to make that a 30-minute corridor running from Wokingham, Winnersh, Hurst, Twyford, Charville, Sonning, Woodley and into Reading. That's included in our BSIP, our bus service improvement plan. But of course, as I said previously in a previous answer to a question, we require external funding for that. So that's our aspiration. It's included in our BSIP.
Councillor Pauline Jorgensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't intending to ask a question, but Councillor Montgomery worried me a bit when he said the final week of the bin rollout would be mopping up houses that have been missed. I certainly know at least of one road in Early, not very far from me, which hasn't had any bins at all. So if you think you've done all the roads and are just mopping up, you're probably wrong.
Apologies, we're not currently yet in the mopping up period. That is from, I believe, Monday coming up.
So final question goes to Andy Mi Song Hong.
My question is to the executive member of Environment and Climate Emergency. Tiling is a vital and historical link between Early and Wooley. Local residents in the form of Friends of Tiling have been working hard to keep the link clear, and Wooley Council have also been playing their part where they have responsibility for part of the land. Can Rockingham Borough Council please take responsibility for managing the vegetation along the remainder of Tiling, and also for clearing and keeping clean the draining ditch that runs down the center of the link by putting this onto the schedule of planning work every year? The Friends of Tiling will continue to do their bit to help, but council support with proper equipment will really help to keep this link open and fit for purpose for many residents, including pedestrians and cyclists who use it every day, and for it to be accessible for emergency service should be the need arise. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. Officers will be very happy to reach out to the Friends of Town Lane to go on site and get a better understanding of the issue, and we'll arrange this within the next few weeks.
That concludes member questions. We've got to the end of 20 minutes. Next section is statements by the leader and executive members. Can you raise your hands, please? So we got everybody. Very good. Stephen, would you like to start, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted to say that the new Twyford Library has been well received by the local community. Indeed, such is the enthusiasm in that local community that there's been a 59% increase in book loans in the first 6 weeks as compared to the same time last year. So a very big thank you to our officers for all their work to make this long-awaited new library a reality. I also want to take this opportunity to correct some of the mistaken views on the council's local plan that circulated during the recent local and parliamentary elections. The current administration at Wokingham inherited a draft local plan from the previous Conservative administration, which began work on a new local plan, as we heard earlier this evening, in 2015. The new administration decided to review the draft it had inherited. We sought advice from a planning barrister on the status of the draft and how much leeway we had to alter it. In essence, our room for manoeuvre was limited. Once a site is in the draft, there is a general presumption in favour of its appearing in the final local plan. It has been identified by planning professionals as suitable for development, and unless circumstances materially change, any attempt to withdraw a site is likely to be challenged successfully by the developers at the inspector's inquiry. The inquiry is the final and vital stage.
Pauline, you want a point of
order? Yeah, point of order. I'd like to ask Andrew Moulton under 4.2.13.16 to confirm that there is no written legal advice on this matter, and that it is possible, although difficult, to take sites in and out of the local plan after Reg 18? Thank you.
I had no idea that the Leader of the Opposition was allowed simply to interrupt my statement. The advice we were given was verbal, not written. I can confirm that.
Excuse me, I didn't ask you for an answer. I asked Andrew
Well,
Bond for
you
an
may
answer.
not have asked me, but you interrupted my statement.
You are not the mayor. I've raised a valid point of order.
Sorry,
Nor are you.
I've raised a valid point of order.
Just hold on a second. Andrew? There is no written legal advice.
No, as I was saying, Mr. Mayor, the advice was actually verbal. It was given to us by the planning barrister who's been hired by the council to advise us on the local plan. And he has advised that we have very little leeway to alter the draft. As I was saying before I was interrupted, the inquiry is the final vital stage of the process at which the government appointed inspector decides whether the plan is sound enough to be approved. The draft, in short, is the point at which the key decisions are made, which cannot, except in the most unusual circumstances, be unmade. I hope, therefore, that when we debate the local plan in September's council meeting, colleagues of all parties will contribute in a realistic and grown-up way and not promise what is undeliverable.
Point of order, Pauline?
Yeah, same point of order. I wonder if Andrew could read out the last paragraph of the advice from planning that he gave me earlier today, unless you'd like me to read it out because you might have it with you.
I've been advised that you can read the last sentence.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It says, looking at plan level, the evolution of a plan from draft proposals to a proposed submission is expected, given the role of a consultation is to seek views and further evidence is gathered. The evolution of a draft plan to the point where you're selecting alternative strategy would likely require further consultation under Reg 18 before proceeding to Reg 19. That clearly states that you can change it, you just need to do some more consultation.
I think you're, I'm afraid, mixing this up, Pauline, if I may respond to that, as it's clearly a direct attack on me and a claim that I'm not telling the truth, which I am, and I resent her implication that I'm not. The very simple fact is, Pauline, Reg 18 involves consultation on the draft. The views raised on that are then assessed to see whether they carry material considerations that would require the draft to be altered. As I said, unless circumstances materially change, unless evidence comes forward that the draft plan is unsound or has failed to take proper account of certain circumstances, then it will continue to be the draft plan. It won't be altered because there is a presumption in favour of its moving forward to the next stage. I have to say, I sought advice on this statement from the planning department before I made it. This has been confirmed by the planning department. You may not like it, but that's the case.
Point of personal explanation.
Okay, Pauline.
What I've done is read out the guidance that was provided to me by Andrew from the planning officers. What you've said at the end, I agree, is completely correct and is what the guidance that I've been given has said. But what you said originally was not what you said at the end. You said that it was very difficult to change and it had to be exceptional circumstances. That isn't correct.
Said that unless circumstances materially change, that is what I was told by our planners. They have approved this statement and told me it is factually correct. If you wish to challenge it, you should take this up with the planning department. And I'm afraid I think you are misinterpreting entirely what they've said. And can I just remind you that earlier on, you seem to be wanting us to get moving with the local plan. And
yet another point of personal explanation. My entire question was, what are you doing with the local plan? I didn't ask you to do it faster or slower. I simply asked you what the date was.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, can we shut this down? Because this is just a debate between you two leaders and it's not the purpose of this point.
Thank you, Rachel. Can we move on to another topic? Prue Bray.
Thank you. Hopefully I'll get through this without any interruptions, but I'm not betting on it. I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to the fact that in September we will have 2 new special educational needs resource units opening in 2 primary schools in Early, one at Radstock and one at Loddon. One is for children with autism and the other one is for children with communication difficulties, which might include autism. This is a really welcome development. We thank the schools for taking this on. It is essential because we have had so many years without enough local provision. I have to say, at risk of provoking a reaction, because it was the previous administration had not forward planned for local provision. I hope it will be to the benefit of local children. And last week, we also had an official opening event for the early years provision, which is an outreach from Addington School in the old Farley Hill school building, which is also for children with special educational needs. Sadly, it's very sad that we have to have special educational needs provision, specialist provision for children who are only 3 and 4 years old. We hope that the care and support they get there, and it is a wonderful facility, will help them as they go forward, and we will be able to get over some of the difficulties that those children have experienced, because they are the children that were born during COVID and in some ways benefited, suffered the most as a result of their parents not being able to get the sort of support and guidance that parents would normally be able to get when those children were conceived and then went through the first 3 years of their life. So those are really good developments. I'm really pleased to be able to say that we've put them in place.
Thank you, Prue. Councillor Paul Fishwick, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wish to update the Chamber on a number of items. The first one is buses. As I've already said, the Arriva 850 will cease on Saturday and it will be taken over by Carousel on the 28th. Those buses will run on an hourly basis until the 31st of August. And then from the 1st of September, they're going to increase the frequency to 3 buses an hour during the day with an enhanced evening service and Saturday services and a new Sunday service. Winnersh Triangle Park and Ride. On the 19th of August, we'll extend the Winnersh Park and Ride services to operate on weekdays with 4 buses an hour and increase the frequency on a Saturday from 3 to 4 buses an hour. This enhancement is funded through the Bus Service Improvement Plan grant. On the 27th of August, we're going to make tweaks to the timetable for the 128 and 129 supported service. That's the Woking and Winnersh, Hurst, Twyford, Travel, Sonning, Woodley and Reading service, and that will give better timings for people living in the Woodley area to access Forest School. On the 1st of September, the Leopard 3 commercial service will enhance its service up to 4 buses an hour in morning peak and afternoon peaks between Reading and Bowhunt School in Arborfield via Shinfield. Also some news, date for your diary. Saturday, 21st of September 2024, the Let's Experience Electric event will be held at Elms Field, Wokingham, between 9 AM and 1 PM. It's a free event organised by a company, Let's Experience Electric, in partnership with Wokingham Borough Council and Wokingham Town Council. The event is targeted both to our residents and businesses, and attendees will have the opportunity to find out more about e-bikes, electric vehicles, and electric vehicle infrastructure and become aware of the latest renewable energy solutions. More information will appear on the My Journey website and also in our Active Travel e-newsletter. Thank you.
Councillor Imogen Shepherd-Debay, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I doubt if anyone in this chamber will have missed the fact that since the last time this council met, we've had a general election. While I know that will be a detailed report from the officers on the election at some point, I think we can all now recognise that there was a considerable amount of effort on their part with delivering what we can hopefully agree was a very successful election. Nearly 100,000 votes were cast over the two constituencies, and Woking Borough Council team had to manage both general election counts in the same space for the first time. So I think I can speak for all of us in thanking all of our officers involved in seamlessly bringing together this spectacular democratic achievement and an undeniable result. Thank you.
Councillor David Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to tell you another good news story from Adult Services. Almost a year ago, Woking Borough Council purchased their first nursing care home. We purchased what's now called Bluebell House Care Home to increase the availability of high quality, affordable dementia and nursing care within the borough. And this local home will ensure that local people can continue to stay in their communities and live lives as they change and evolve. We're going to mark this event, this anniversary, with an event for the people who live in Bluebell House, their friends, their family, the staff, as well as some of the people who have been involved in all the work in recent months. Since the purchase of the home, there's been further investment from Woking Borough Council to refurbish and update the building that is improving living conditions. Whilst the building work is not yet quite complete, it's great to see that these improvements taking shape. It already is a more welcoming and inclusive home, an inclusive space. The improved aspects of safety and care delivery, and certainly from what I've experienced, the users, their families, and staff seem to really value this improvement.
Thank you. That concludes that section. The next section is statements from council-owned companies. Stephen, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Yesterday's board meeting of Woking Borough Council Holdings confirmed the appointment of new non-executive directors to the boards of the council's housing companies, and noted the resignation from the boards of the elected member representatives. These developments enacted the recommendations of the independent Altair review, Altair report, a review of the council's housing companies and their role in the delivery of affordable housing in the borough. Henceforth, elected members will set strategic direction and monitor progress through a shareholder committee, which will be constituted as a subcommittee of the executive. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. The next item is motions. Motion 519, Councillor Vishal Srinivasan. Would you like to propose this motion?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Pauline. Vishal, would you like to speak to this motion?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Sure. Hi, my name is Vishal, and if you didn't know, I was in school just 2 years ago. So I want to use this experience to speak to you on why we should pass this motion. So most of us here have either been in education very recently, or more likely have someone in or formerly in education. And as a result, I don't need to emphasize to you the cost of sending someone to school. I'm sure you know how it goes, buying them the newest pencil cases, giving them the trendiest toys, bags, and so on. And I'm sure you also know that children grow. They grow fast. I remember going shoe, shirt, trouser shopping every single year, but luckily I have a younger brother, so anything bought for me could just be passed on down. However, my issue is that if I had a sister instead of a brother or multiple siblings, I can only imagine the cost to the parents paying for uniform every single year, not for one, but for multiple children. And just buying uniform for me alone cost my parents a significant amount. So I just want you to think about the cost to parents with multiple children, especially if they can't use hand-me-downs. Now, again, I urge you not to consider the average parent, but the less fortunate one or the single parent, who are putting everything towards their children's education, and making them purchase new uniform purely due to a change in design seems unnecessary when the overall cost of living is putting such high pressure on parents. By making the Wokingham Borough Council contact every single school within the borough, we can help reduce the financial stress on parents. Not every school may be considering a change in uniform design, but if we can encourage just even one school to keep their changes to a minimum, we may be helping many parents who don't have the means to purchase multiple uniforms on such short notice. Another thing I want to raise attention to is the need to allow more non-school branded uniform items. The companies making these school jumpers that charge with the brand logo on charge very high prices compared to the generic version. And this tax on parents should not be compulsory, and the parents should have the choice whether they want to pay the premium. Our job as councillors is to help the community and make sure we represent all citizens, especially those who are less fortunate. Less money spent on uniform by parents would mean more disposable income for families to spend on other stuff, such as clothes outside of school or after-school classes, which cost a lot. I know it may not affect a lot of people. However, we are fortunate to be a relatively well-off borough. But by passing this motion, if we can help just one family, that's one family that we've helped at no cost to anyone else, not even us, as mentioned in the motion. Every parent wants the best for their child. Our request to schools in the borough is to help parents not spend money unnecessarily, especially if it is due to a change in design as opposed to regularly when children outgrow their uniform. As my closing remarks, I would like you to picture yourself. Picture yourself as someone who has had their gas prices, electricity bill, and everything rise in the span of a year. Your growing kids means increased grocery bills. It also means increased spending on clothes every single year, new shoes, and in general, just increased costs with raising them. Now picture yourself having to spend a big part of your weekly income to buy all your children new uniform due to a change in design, and furthered by the fact that the school doesn't allow non-school branded uniform. This is the case that many people and families face every time a design is changed. The impact of this may be that they purchase the new changed uniform, but they may have to sacrifice somewhere else. Sometimes in places where they should never sacrifice.
Thank you. That's time.
Sure.
Thank you.
I was just going to say we accept the amendment proposed by the others. Sure. My bad.
I know we have to go through the process. Thank you, Vishal. Does any member wish to speak against the motion? Andrew Gray.
Could I propose the amendment which has been circulated?
Has this been circulated to
Yes.
everybody?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, I'm here.
Before we do that, does Pauline want to speak as the second?
Yeah, that's that.
No, does Pauline want to reserve her right? Yeah.
Pauline, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I'll reserve my right, thank you.
Thank you. So the amendment is proposed, seconded and circulated. Do we need an adjournment or not? We don't need an adjournment.
Do we get
Sorry, Rachel, I think we believe we need a seconder for Andrew's amendment. Rachel, are you going to second?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Rachel. So the proposer has 3 minutes to speak to the amendment. So Andrew, would you like to speak, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I'd like to propose this amendment to the motion. I agree with the broad ambitions of the motion which is set forth, which I'm sure we can all agree with. The previous government's cost of living crisis has hit families really hard, and the cost of branded uniform is a real worry to many families in the borough and nationally as well. It is absolutely right that schools should be encouraged to limit branded items and this issue of of single suppliers, and put in place availability of second-hand uniform both to support parents and help the environment, as we've outlined in the amendment. What the motion neglects to note is that all of these things have been put in place through statutory guidance to schools in 2021. Schools are already doing this because the government has asked them to do it. Most, yeah, it is a conservative, and I do say, as much as I really support this. Yes, I think it's. I won't say this very often, but it's one of the things I do think was right. Now, yeah, most schools. One of the things I have with this is most schools are no longer under local authority control. So I actually think the contacting every school part of it is to remind them of the statutory guidance which already exists and was enforced 3 years ago is not an effective use of council resources. And I think many will agree that I trust that our schools in the borough are following the DfE guidance that they received 3 years ago. With so many schools being academies, it makes the council's influence quite difficult. But this amendment recognises the work of our partner agencies on both of these issues. And this is where the work of the council really can make progress in this area in supporting these families. Whilst I supported the government guidance in 2021, as I've just said, the incoming government has announced even stronger measures in the King's Speech on this, which I hope will go even further than the last government in supporting families with the cost of sending their children to school, by not only just recommending this cap on branded items, but actually introducing a cap on the branded items. I think it's mentioned as 2 or 3 items. So I propose this amendment to sort of recognise the real work that the council is doing, recognise that schools are going with this government guidance, and make sure that the council can do what is within its remit to make sure this the support is felt by families.
Yeah. Vishal, do you wish to accept the amendment?
Yes, I do.
Thank you very much. So as that amendment has been accepted, it becomes a substantive motion. Does any member wish to speak against the amended motion? Yeah. Pauline, you now have the right to speak to this.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm delighted that it looks like the whole council agrees with Vishal's motion, and I would like to congratulate Vishal for bringing a motion so early in his time in the council. He's done a great job, and a very worthwhile motion indeed. I'm happy also to see that Andrew appreciates the Conservative government's guidance, as we do, and I look forward to more agreements between Conservatives and Labour going forward. You never know. I've recently visited both First Days and Cowshed, who are excellent charities in the area, helping with the provision of uniforms. But I think we can do more. One of the issues here is that even if the branded uniform design is optional, people who can't afford it become equivalent to second-class citizens. They get bullied, they get teased, they stand out. So it's really important that uniforms are easily available, not branded, not fancy, not changing all the time, and are cheap and accessible. And you can go and get them in Asda or Marks and Spencer's rather than having to go to a distinct shop. And that's particularly important with sports equipment and sports uniforms, which are very heavily branded, as I saw in First Days. So I'm very happy to support this amended motion. I would just point out that we can communicate with schools. Emails are free. It doesn't cost a lot of money. We've got contact with all the schools. I'm not convinced they actually remember the government guidance all the time, and I think it would be a good idea to remind them, because I've seen uniforms, particularly for sports wear, that are very, very complex. I've got lots of badges and change frequently, and I'd like to see an end to that.
Okay, as the amendment has been accepted, we will go straight to a vote. All of those in favour? Those against? Abstentions? Motion is carried. Thank you. That's the end of the meeting, isn't it? Thank you very much, everyone. The end of the meeting.